Ya kan?
Yang ngeroyok bukan petarung.
Oke, baiklah. Sekarang sudah jam 14.10 WIB. Selamat datang, Bapak Ibu sekalian, teman-teman, dalam acara presentasi mengenai tata kelola pengelolaan sampah di Pulau Gangga, Minahasa Utara, Provinsi Sulawesi Utara. Nah, presentasi kali ini kita akan sebenarnya mempresentasikan hasil penelitian dari rekan kita, rekan magang kita, yaitu Celia Wang. Beliau ini adalah mahasiswa S1 dari Maastricht University, dan statusnya sekarang adalah mahasiswa magang di APK. Nah, magang beliau sudah selesai, masa magangnya, dan hasil dari penelitian akan dipresentasikan pada siang hari ini. Nah, mungkin langsung saja untuk agenda pada hari ini. Yang pertama adalah kita akan ada kata pengantar sedikit dari Pak Akbar Nido selaku CEO YPK. Yang kedua, Nona Celia Wang akan mempresentasikan hasil penelitiannya, diikuti dengan sesi diskusi. Lalu setelah sesi diskusi, nanti Celia akan mempresentasikan mengenai pengalaman kerja selama dia magang di APK, dan jika masih ada waktu, kita akan lanjutkan dengan sesi diskusi. Dan yang terakhir adalah kata penutup kembali dari Pak Akbar. Presentasi atau acara hari ini, untuk presentasinya akan dilakukan dalam bahasa Inggris. Jadi teman-teman berhubung ini tidak ada penerjemah di sini, jadi silakan disimak baik-baik presentasi dari Celia. Untuk yang ingin mengajukan pertanyaan nanti bisa dengan bahasa Inggris atau dengan bahasa Indonesia. Nanti saya yang akan menerjemahkan pertanyaan itu ke dalam bahasa Inggris. Begitu, mungkin langsung saja kita masuki di awal acara pertama, yaitu kata pengantar dari Pak Akbar Dikdo. Silakan Pak Akbar Dikdo, waktunya.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih teman-teman semua, Mbak Ami. Welcome, Celia. Thank you for joining us today. Hari ini kita akan mencoba mendengarkan pengalaman Celia bekerja sebagai magang di YPK, tapi sekaligus juga membantu penelitian-penelitian kita terkait dengan pengelolaan pesisir dan pulau-pulau kecil, khususnya dari sisi sampah. Dan penelitian ini juga dimanfaatkan oleh Celia untuk membantu studinya dia di Maastricht University. Nah, saya kira ini pengalaman yang unik karena magang ini, karena kondisi COVID-19 saat ini, Celia tidak bisa berada di Indonesia. Tapi Celia berada di negara asalnya. Kalau Maastricht University itu ada di Belanda, Celia tinggal di Belgia, jadi unik gitu. Nanti kita harapkan ada pengalaman-pengalaman yang bisa dibagi dari Celia, kesulitan, tantangan, hasilnya itu bisa kita dengarkan sama-sama, dan mudah-mudahan ini bisa menjadi penyemangat buat kita semua bahwa keterbatasan kondisi bagaimanapun kita tetap berusaha untuk produktif dan menghasilkan terobosan. Jadi silakan teman-teman, nanti kita dialog saja santai, mudah-mudahan dapat pembelajaran dari apa yang dihasilkan oleh penelitiannya Celia, dan harapannya tentu saja ada respon-respon dari teman-teman nantinya. Saya kira ini kesempatan baik untuk berbagi, sharing, teman-teman mau tanya apapun yang berkaitan dengan penelitian dan pengalamannya dia bekerja sebagai magang di sini, itu akan menjadi sesuatu yang sangat menarik. Sekali lagi, saya sendiri penasaran ingin mendengarkan. So, we are very happy to have you here, Celia, and we hope that we can learn each other. We listen to your results, and I hope also we will hear about your experience as a long-distance researcher. How do you overcome your challenges, and what is the opportunity, and what your expectation for your future career? So, terima kasih. Saya kembalikan ke Ami.
Terima kasih Pak Akbar atas kata pengantarnya. Setelah ini Celia akan membawakan presentasinya. Sementara itu, jika rekan-rekan sekalian ada pertanyaan, bisa disampaikan melalui kolom chat. Atau nanti setelah Q&A dibuka, itu rekan-rekan bisa raise hand untuk mengajukan pertanyaan secara langsung. Oke, langsung saja. Celia, you can have your presentation now. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Ami and Pak Akbar for the introduction. So I'm really excited actually to be here, a bit nervous, but I think it should be okay. I'm really excited to present you a growing interest of mine since I've been working with YPK and CTSS, and I think that you all know that there's a big waste issue in Indonesia, but here we wanted to focus actually on the Ganga Island case, and also maybe a potential solution to the waste issue that we are facing, which is collaborative governance. So we are going to talk about this now. So first, as a small agenda, so I will just start with the background, so the whole waste issue, just to refresh your memory, and then talk about the situation of Ganga Island. I will talk then about the work that me and the YPK team has been doing from a theory point of view, and then also a practical, so what have we done, and then of course our findings and maybe some implication and recommendation. Hopefully you will have some question and we can have maybe discussions or debates, see if you agree or not with my findings. And lastly, I think that for some of you, if you want to work with YAPECA, I will talk about my working experience, but I think also in general how it is to work on offline and from far away, maybe some tips that I have discovered. If I speak too fast or if there are any questions, please feel free, and I think that Amy or someone can maybe translate if it's in Bahasa. Perfect. So first of all, I think I would like to present myself. So my name is Wang Celia. You can just call me Celia. I'm a freshly graduated student from Maastricht University in economics and business economics with a specialization in emerging markets. So this is really what I think it was really interesting, since I'm born in Belgium, but I'm Chinese. So I think that I have this also emerging market point of view that I think is really interesting. I have been an intern for 4 months actually with IPB and CTSS through a Maastricht University of Management. And then after those 4 months, I've done a small collaboration with YAPECA to actually do my thesis, because I wanted to talk about still to be involved into the waste management. And so we have done that in small island and local communities, which I will talk about. And then hopefully in the future, I still want to go into everything business sustainability, whether it's finance, supply chain, or anything that is related to how can we maybe be more sustainable in our economic activities. So yes, perfect. And so first, as the background, I wanted to show you this as an introduction. I think it's really interesting. So I'm just going to share it to you. So this is actually a waste clock. So it's a counter, and this is so far away how many waste did we produce overall in this world. So right now we are around 1.5 billion tons of waste only in 2021. And they say that we expect actually that each year we produce 2.12 billion of waste, which is really, really a lot, I think, because it's tons, but we don't really, I think, realize that. So, and it's a really nice website where they have a lot of information if you want to check it. So this is just a small introductory, and perfect. So it's not surprising that I think that waste is a big issue, not only in Indonesia, but worldwide. It's just everywhere in developing and developed countries. So it's not only Indonesia or all those poorer countries, but emerging countries, I mean, but also Indonesia and is really famous for the plastic waste emergency that they're having, and especially because it's a big biodiversity country where there's a lot of coastal villages and a lot of marine biodiversity, but also on land. So it's really important to try to take care of the environment, which also plays a big role in the economy. And I think that I always show this graph because it's always so surprising to me. So for example, when we talk about climate change, we think about greenhouse gases, and we often think about, for example, energy, petrol, charcoal, or maybe palm tree, the agriculture industry. But there's this in orange, which is the waste. And you can see that this is bigger than the agriculture and the manufacturing industry together. So, but it's still something that is not so covered. I think more and more, but not enough, I feel like, because it's really, really harmful. And we will see that just after that why. But before really starting, I wanted to show some fun facts about Indonesia. So there are more than 200 tons of waste produced per day in Indonesia. So 200 tons per day. I thought that was really surprising. And I know that plastic is a big issue because we are using more and more, but still I think that it's really important to acknowledge that in a lot of developing countries, organic waste is still the most, the bigger type of waste that we have. And it's also really actually harmful because it emits a lot of greenhouse gases such as methane or CO2. And so it's really actually really harmful. And we should also look into organic and not only plastic waste. And with regard to there's only a 7% recycling rate. So this is quite low compared if we say to European country, which is around maybe 50 to 70% of the recycling rate. So there's still some work to do. And also it's the second world worst polluter, plastic polluter, just after China. And because there's a lot of costs, so all the plastic always ends up in the ocean. And so this has been also a really big issue that you must have heard about. So what is actually waste management? So it's all the activities and the action from the generation of the waste. Then it should be hopefully segregated into the different type of waste. So you have plastic, maybe cans and all of those. And then it has to be collected from the point of use or from different centers. And then it should be directed to the disposal site. So the last one, which you should be recycling, maybe making energy, or most of the time it's just dumped into a landfill. So this is the whole supply chain, let's say, of the waste management. And overall, but what is happening in Indonesia? So this is a broad scheme of what is the waste management system. I think it's mostly in urban areas. So consumers, they generate trash. And then it has to be collected, but we can see that in Indonesia, there's only a 7% rate of collection. So you have, for example, waste bank, you have some centers, the 3R centers that you have, but you also have informal collectors in, for example, the scavengers, and you have private collection, but this is still rather low because then everything else is not managed, or it's just dumped into landfills. So this is the main way to dispose of waste. You just put them in big mountains. And I know there have been a lot of accidents also happening in Indonesia. And only a small percent, so as I've said, 7% of the plastics is actually recycled. So this is really low, and this is what we're trying to see, why is that happening and how can we maybe change that. And in line, of course, with YAPECA's work, because they are nature conservation and community empowerment, especially in small islands. So this is where I also wanted to have maybe my focus, because for Indonesia, it's so relevant. There are more than 17,000 islands, 80,000 villages, and it's really hard for them to each take care of their own waste. And you need to have maybe a bigger scheme. And especially in small islands, because they have unique physical, so they are really small and they don't have a lot of land availability. They have to transport all of their waste. Also economically, because they don't have a lot of, sometimes they have financial difficulties. They rely on external donors, or they rely on tourism to actually survive. But also socially, because maybe in those smaller islands, there's less awareness and education about the waste. And also they don't have all the knowledge and technology to take care of it. Political, because there's still a lot of, I think, maybe corruption, briberies, especially in smaller islands, and the institutions are not always there for that prioritize waste management, such as, for example, policies or regulation that could make maybe recycling mandatory, for example. And so what, of course, YAPECA is working in North Sulawesi. So this is where we will have our focus. And here it's especially in the North Minahasa Regency. And why there? Because actually, we wanted to look at small island and the coastal management of waste, because those has been an issue. And we have seen that actually in the North Minahasa district, the sub-district that are further away from, for example, Ermadidi, well, in here, the waste management was almost non-existent compared to the closer you go to inland, then the better was the waste management. But here they were kind of neglected, and so there was nothing, and we tried to do research and there was nothing that we couldn't find. There was maybe one small article about some issues, but we didn't even know, okay, who was involved in the waste management, what were they doing, what was the waste management schemes. So we wanted to look more into that. And so we've decided, given some time constraint and also practical also because of COVID, we decided to actually focus on Gaga Island and some of the connections. So let's see if Gaga Island have some trash, if they transport it to Manado or to maybe Lihaga Island. Let's see how do they all work together. And so this is going to be our sample, Gaga Island and its connection. And as I've mentioned, so this is the state of what is happening there. I think that in smaller islands, since they rely on tourism, most of the trash they use a lot of plastic trash and single use, even though they might not have the capabilities to actually take care of it and recycle it. So the use of plastic has overgrown the mitigation of the waste. So they're trying to, so you can see that it's just dumped, or they're trying to burn it, to bury it, but they don't know the harmful consequences, not only for the environment, but for their health and for all of those, just also maybe for tourism, it's really bad for just the scenery. So they don't know that that they shouldn't do that. And that's why we need those collaboration. But so after showing this broad picture, what have we done? My assumption was that in those in those type of environmental issues, we need collaboration. Why? Because waste management is a wicked environmental issue. So it means that there's a lot of, it's a really complex issue that needs, for example, coordination, networkings, that need to go cross sectors, industry, culture. So it's really something that is, as we call, transdisciplinary, because it was also some of the work done in CTSS. So it's really, you need to look at so many different dimensions and actors and factors that it's so hard to do it alone. That's why public services are usually cross-organizational. So for example, you need private businesses, you need some NGOs, and you need all of those with different culture, with different discipline. You need philosophy, you need science, you need business. And so this is why collaboration is really, really important. Not only is it important, but there's also a lot of benefits. So, you will pool your knowledge, your expertise and resource, financial, money, and then you can go beyond what you will only know, right? And you can share all of this, and that will, of course, make it more productive, efficient. You will have more innovation, and maybe you will find solutions that you couldn't do it on your own. And also, I think that one that is really important is decreasing corruption, because whenever you have really great collaboration and that is effective, you usually are more transparent and you feel more responsible, and then it will decrease corruption, which is also, I know, a big issue in emerging countries. But what will we need for those collaboration? So we really need to do everything as a consensus, so co-design, co-production, and co-assessment, and this really should be inclusive. You really need also a favoring environment, so that is maybe judiciary, also business, financial. So policy and regulation really need to be helping for this collaboration. You need some drivers. For example, you need to have good leaders, and you need to have good dynamics. So that's what we're going to talk about, but you need to have good trust. You shouldn't have conflict of interest. You should try to be committed and motivated, and all of those different small things, but that actually really matters in a collaboration. Otherwise, it's not effective. And all of those combined together, we call it this term collaborative governance. So it's really grouping multiple stakeholders in common forums to engage in consensus-oriented decision-making. So it's really shifting from one government that decide everything. So we will do this, and really having a collaborative governance. So multiple people make actually the decision together. And that's how it should work. So who are the main actors that we should look into? And I think that here in the waste management, as in many other public services, we have to look into the private sector. So everything from businesses, a big company, international corporation. then the public sectors, everything from government, authorities, officials, all of, even the local one, from the local to the regional to the even national government. And then also we have to include everything from the society side, so NGO, civil society, community groups, or activists, all of those. And we really need to have those different private, public, and society work together in order to really reach a sustainable waste management that will be based on a circular economy. So what was the purpose of our research? So as I mentioned, there was almost, we didn't know anything almost from the waste situation there. So we had 3 main purposes, is to discover, so which actors are actually involved even in the waste management, what are they doing, what is the current status, what are then the second point, what are the waste issues, so what are the perceived issues that the actors have, what is the most important, what should we tackle first, is it from the regulation side, policies, is it just the trash, is it human resources, what do they need, and how can we overcome this? And then furthermore, and then the last point, which is also really important, so how can we implement and improve the collaborative governance? So I don't want to be too technical, but this is just how did we do this. So our methodology was a mix of the theoretical part of the collaborative governance, and this we used the integrative framework of Emerson. And then we did a more practical side, which was from the YAPECA team, and they did actually surveys and interviews because I couldn't be on the field. But so they did actually first a survey, and so that was the primary data collection. They had, I think, 41 responded, which was already really good given the whole situation there. It was both online and offline. It was translated in Bahasa, and we tried to make it together. So I have more theoretical side and they have more the practical. They can maybe really adapt it to the local communities and to the language and to the local languages and culture. And then we had some also deeper interviews, so it was semi-structures with some questions, but we could always add some more, and also observation, and that was to have more in-depth answers and maybe look what were the opinions and perception based also on the survey. So those were really complementary, and so this is what we've done. And so what did we find? So what were the actual findings? So first of all, looking at the actors, what type of actors did we have? We tried to really have public, private, and community-led organizations. So to really try to cover all of the different aspects. And here we can see, so we started with Ganga Island, and then we went to 3 actually coastal villages. So we have Likupang, Manado, and Lambean. And then we had also 2 other small islands, so Bangka and Lihaga. And then we tried to reach some private actors, mostly on the island. I think they were mostly resort and beach clubs, so all of those, Coral Eye Beach Club and Ganga Island Resorts. And then we also had some community-led organization, of course, Waste Bank, you know it, the recycling center, which was also working with Waste Bank and Bumdies and all of those. And then also the Mendung family, which is also quite famous, I think, in Manado, if I remember correctly. And then we also had DLH. We had an interview with them to try to also account for the regional environment services. So those, we really tried to, I think we had quite a diversity of actors, which was really good. And so we find 3 types of actually issues. And so the first one was social issues. So everything from all the respondents mentioned that segregation, transportation, and collection was missing. So that was really hard because, for example, they said that for the whole Minahasa region, there were only 7 trucks. So how can we tackle all of the trash with 7 tracks? This is almost impossible. But and everything from segregation and collection, people maybe don't want to participate. They are not really aware of what and how they should recycle, where they can bring their waste, and then they don't want to pay the fees. Then they will just throw it, right? You can throw it in the nature, you can throw it in the ocean, which is free and much easier. But and also the lack of, when you collect the trash, it's also really important to have skilled human resources, for example, because if you just collect it and you just mix everything together, whereas it was segregated, then it's not working. It won't be good. And also on small island, it's really important. There's a lot of beach pollution. So there's this lack of human resources to, for example, do beach cleanup in the short term, at least. So those were some social issues. Then we also have, of course, economic, which is really important when we talk about waste management, because, for example, the fee systems were not working. When they're trying to get the fees from household, then some mentioned that the revenues were not coming because of the poor financial management of a lot of the government. So they will maybe not collect really properly and won't fund really efficiently, and they will just build, for example, an infrastructure that will not be used or something, and that will just stay there, and it's not really research-based fundings. Then, of course, there's a lot of lack of technology. That is also a big issue, especially in small island, because they have to import all of this technology or try to look for big companies that want to invest in them. They lack infrastructure. They lack also the space to put those infrastructure. Transportation, as I've mentioned, is also really hard, especially from small island, because they have to transport their waste to recycling centers in in the mainland. And also this absence of profitable markets. People have been struggling to actually make money out of waste, because that's what they do. A lot of scavengers try to make money by recycling the waste, but there's a lot of monopoles that are just fixing a price and then they make losses, for example. And there's also absence of incentives. So for example, I know that in Hermadidi, there was a big bottle company, but then they wanted to shut it down to not use single-use plastic, but there would have been too many economic and social impacts. So they just said, okay, well, just use plastic, it's fine, because we have more these financial incentives to make people work than maybe saving the planet and reducing the waste. And lastly, there's this institutional waste issue. So that is everything from institution, government. So a lot of respondents said that they didn't understand how were the waste mechanism working, who was collecting the waste, who was disposing of it, who was really the leader, who was the responsible for those. It was really unclear, because you have incoherent regulation and policy. You have so many different government bodies that are involved, and you need a lot of red tapes, a lot of bureaucracies. You have all of those ineffective management from all of those different actors. And then also, I think a lack of data is also a big issue, because you don't know where you produce the waste, what is it composed of, and how do you recycle it. And land availability I've mentioned, and corruption is also a big issue, because, for example, if you want to have something, you will have to either bribe someone, or you will only have it if you know that person, or if it's from your family. So those were also big issue that people mentioned that was impending sustainable waste management. And then I think lastly, how can we maybe increase collaboration? So they've mentioned that the barriers to collaboration were mostly maybe financial. So they were either not having enough funds, or they didn't want to give some. The networking, so they didn't have enough, they didn't know the connection, how to go and engage with them. And they mostly mentioned that this should be from the government side. And even if you knew those people, sometimes you will have conflict of interest, because if you are an NGO and you want to work with this private company, then maybe they want to make money, but you are not necessarily in that point of view. You just want to maybe increase awareness and try to recycle more, but then they just want to make profit and maybe not in the best way. Also, of course, politics plays a big role. I think that's because you can still make money out of trash. So I think politics is still really involved. And there was even mafia in the waste. You have so bribery and nepotism, and also you have, for example, lack of trust with the different partners that you have, because previous collaboration have not been working, and then regulation that might not be incentivizing collaboration. When it comes to drivers, there are always some drivers that will make people want to work together. So, for example, one that is really, really important and that has been missing throughout this whole research is actually having an active and initiative leader. So someone that will come and will have to pay those transaction costs, so that we have to try to work and make everything try to be the meditator between the different actors and try to be motivating and try to engage everyone. So that has been missing, which is really important. I think that there is interdependence, because all of those different actors in small island, they rely on each other. They need, for example, if they rely on tourism, they need to work together to actually make the environment beautiful and clean and healthy, so they can keep on going with their economic activities. And also uncertainty, I think that this is also quite clear that a lot of those respondents said that they were not certain if they are in the waste management, what will happen with them in the future, like what will be the situation, is it really stable? But I think it's mostly risky, so also for them. So that's why they really need to collaborate together. And then the dynamics of collaboration are really, I think that was really interesting, because it's also part of the barriers, because the dynamics of the collaboration in North Minahasa were not really good. For example, there was a lot of absence of communication. People would just not respond to you. They will ignore you, or they will say, yeah, I will follow up, but they didn't really. So this, of course, lead to a lot. You will lose all the trust, and you will not maybe feel as committed. And then when you do a project, then you will not reach the outcomes that you were expecting. And this is also highly linked then to the shared understanding. So if you do a collaboration, you really have this mutual understanding that, okay, right now we're here and we want to do this, and this will be the output. So I think that sometimes a lot of people get confused, they misunderstand each other, and then this lead to the failure of the collaboration. So this is really important to look into. And so this is what we have found. And so what I've mentioned, that the waste streams should really be inclusive, I think. So you should start with, for example, the upstream, so everything from design and production. And those are maybe mostly big companies, and I think multinational, they should be more involved, because they should be more involved. They should prevent and reduce everything from the packaging. So in a supermarket, you don't need all your vegetables and fruits to be packaged. And so this is a big step that needs to be undertaken, because right now, only if the individual work and try to reduce and reuse as much as possible, I don't think it will still be useful, because it still needs to come from there. But then individual try to reduce and reuse, and then at the end, whatever there's residual, you try to collect it and treat it to make it really a circular economy. So you really can see that there's responsibility from the state, from the companies, and from individuals, as we mentioned, and this has to be harmonious, right? And so in conclusion, what did we find in North Minahasa? Is that we have social issues. So everything from the waste mechanism, we don't have, there's almost no mechanism. And then you need to increase participation and education and awareness. you have a lot of economic issue because people will just maybe not go into waste because it's really marginalized sectors. So people really, you need to make it profitable for people to actually go into the waste management. So you will need those new technology, the state-of-art technology, new transportation that is efficient, and new facilities and tools for them to actually make it possible for a small island to treat their own waste. And then also institutional issues, so everything from the environment. So government should really prioritize sustainable waste management. They should try that with management, with regulation policies, try to decrease corruption, and try to decrease, for example, everything red tapes when it comes to collaboration, for example. So how can we try to increase that? So first of all, I think you really need effective collaboration. And that is because in North Minahasa, there was only one collaboration, I think, with an NGO. And it's really important to also include the society and the people. So, and also big companies. So NGOs and big companies, those were really, I think, excluded into the collaboration there. And big companies will provide investment, and also they can gain something, but they will bring investments and also for example technology and knowledge. So it will be really interesting and important to engage with them actively. And so I've also mentioned point out a leader, so someone that will be the one, okay, we have to do this, and try to be actively committed to it and putting everyone together. And this has to be, of course, in a long-term view. So it's not only about cleaning up the beach today, it's about having good institution, collaborative dynamics, and so trust, commitment, motivation, engagement, and also have those different types of training that should be provided, everything from management to financial, so awareness, education. And all of this should happen in a circular economy. So right now we're not talking about just using then destroying, but really trying to use it, reuse it, and try to maybe transform it into either energy or something that we can reuse. And this will be done while creating new jobs, maybe energy, and reuse our resources because they are not infinite. So this is really what I have come up with, but this will follow also in a policy brief more in detail, because this is really a summary. But I wanted to finish this first part with a quote that I found interesting. There is not such thing as a way. When we throw anything away, it must go somewhere. Because I feel like a lot of people don't realize it, but for example, when you eat something and just throw away the trash, then you don't see it, but there's no way, it has to go somewhere. So I think that we should be also really self-aware of that. But right, at least this is the first half of the presentation. I'm not sure if you have any question or something, and I hope you enjoy it. Questions or feedback?
Thank you, Celia. It's really an interesting presentations. We see in North Minahasa in particular, we still have a lot of room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have two questions here.
Mm-hmm.
I will translate them for you.
Thank you.
So both questions are from Pak Dwi Adiasto. Terima kasih, Mas Nugi. So the first question is, you mentioned in your presentation that there are gaps of corruption in waste management governance. Can you perhaps elaborate more about that? Where did you find those gaps of corruption in the governance, in waste management governance, and maybe a little, what do you think can alleviate the corruption gaps?
I think that's also really interesting, because I wouldn't think that there would be corruption in waste management, but after reviewing the interviews and also from my internship in CTSS, waste is actually still money. You can actually get quite a lot of money if you find the right parts. So for example, if you have metals or really good plastic, you can make quite some money. So people are still interested into it. For example, you have some mafias that will say, okay, this is our waste and we will take care of it. But corruption from the government is also really relevant. I think, for example, oh, I know you from your friend or your family, so I will give you this permit, or you can do this, or you can throw your trash in here. Those kind of corruption, I think, also mostly. But also there was, I think, from the Ganga Island resort manager, he mentioned that all of those, for example, ceremonies are more ceremonial. So if people meet together and and they have a meeting and they want to talk about waste management, so how can we improve the waste issues? And for example, he will offer a speaker and try to, you know, have some personal gain into this. So, oh yeah, vote for me, or maybe I will do this and this, and I will offer you this. But they don't really tackle the issue at hand. You know, they will try to have more. It seems like they have other priorities than the waste management. So I think this type of corruption, and I think that is why collaboration is really important, because if it's really inclusive and that everyone is around the table and they have to talk, then you are more transparent, you are accountable, and if everyone say no, you can't do this, then corruption should decrease, right? So I think it needs to be really active engagement from all of the different actors, but they have to be included into, for example, decision making or consensus.
So it is more to the it's not really inclusive. So you suggest that there are needs for more inclusiveness for the waste management governance, because everyone in your research, not everyone perhaps, a lot of people in your research is using their own private connection to quote unquote resolve the waste management issues.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that even a lot of people mention, I don't have the connection to try to have collaboration with other people, and they're not really helping. They, you know, just between them together, the big players, they might just want to get more money, and they're not, for example, including NGOs enough, or maybe other big companies, because they try to make profit out of it. So that's why it's not fully working collaboration right now.
That's really interesting, and that brings us. Do I need to translate this, Mas Nugi? Perlu di-translate nggak nih?
Yang kedua.
Yang kedua, yang pertanyaan kedua atau jawaban yang kedua tadi?
Jawaban, iya. Oke, sudah cukup sih. Yang kedua aja.
Pertanyaan langsung ya, yang kedua ya. Oke, and that brings us to the second question. Pak Dwi asked if there are a monopoly of waste management in North Minahasa. For example, in the US, the waste management is monopolized by Italians. What about Indonesia? Is there any monopoly from a certain group of ethnicity or social group for this waste management? Because as you have mentioned that waste is actually money. So perhaps there are some people looking for monopolizing the waste management as a business. What do you think, Celia?
Yes, I didn't know about the Italian monopoly in US, so that is really interesting. I didn't know about that, but definitely I think that this is already happening in Indonesia. I'm not too sure about North Minahasa in general, specifically, but this is, of course, happening, especially, for example, big companies that can set the price when they buy the waste. So they set the price. They say, okay, this is what I want, and this is what I give you. And if it's not enough, I don't care, because maybe it's the only company that can buy your trash. So in that sense, they also do monopoly prices. And I think that some people have complained. So that's why they're asking maybe for the intervention of government to try to be more fair and try to find maybe other alternatives, maybe have set a price floor or maybe a ceiling, something like that, when you sell it and you buy. So not one or two players can monopolize everything, right? And it has to be more fair, for example, for waste banks, because if they rely only on one center of recycling, which is often happening, then you can have a lot of big monopolies issues. And I think that was happening during COVID, because then a lot of, for example, actors they closed, and then all of the waste bank, they didn't know where to sell the trash. They weren't making any profit. So just the waste management at some point during COVID was really, really bad, because just the one recycling center closed. So in that sense, yeah, there can be a lot of monopolies and also mafias even. So
ya, jadi begitu Mas Dwi. Jadi kemungkinan untuk monopoli itu ada karena dari pemerintah juga tidak ada regulasi. There are no regulations about the price. If you want to buy waste, then what is the ceiling price and what is the lowest price? Jadi potensi untuk monopoli dan potensi untuk munculnya mafia dalam pengelolaan sampah itu mungkin ada. Begitu mungkin Mas Dwi, Mas Nugi.
Yeah, thank you, Celia, because I think that if we think about the monopoly and then think about the money for having or controlling the waste management, then we must consider that it will deals to the other crimes, for example, like bribery or like using violence to avoid competition to other groups or ethnics. Yeah, but this is good. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think that it's really interesting. Then, should we see waste as an economic only factors, or should we see it more as an environmental and make it fair for everyone? You know, I think that is also a big issue that we don't always know how to balance, because you have to make it profitable for people to be interested into. But if it's then too profitable, they can be, you know, cheat and fraud. So it's really two ways that you really find a good balance.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Dwi and we have another question. This is from Pak Akbar. We have 3 questions from Pak Akbar. I will read to you 2 of the 3 questions first, because I think that these 2 questions are related. The first one is in this research, what is the role of the village government in Gangga or other village in waste management? And then how about the young people in these villages? Do they have any, you know, ideas or initiative in waste management in their village? Do you have some stories to tell about this?
Yes. First, maybe I'll start with the village government. I think that actually I didn't include them, because when the YAPK team did first a pre-study of the stakeholders, and so in each, of course, villages you have the village government, but the only thing that they are doing is direct dumping. So we can say that they haven't really prioritized waste management, though I feel like that the local government, you know, they are closer to the people, so they might be a bit more committed, but still there was really nothing in place, because it also has to come maybe from even upper, so national, regional levels, and they haven't really done anything. So there's not even, for example, collection, so universal collection, and then they don't really look at maybe how can we do it systematically, or maybe in a more efficient way, or how can we fund, because as I've mentioned, there's only 7 trucks for the whole North Minahasa Regency. 7 trucks is really nothing if you want to take care of all of this trash. So they haven't really had a role, I feel like it, and they should, because they should be the intermediary between all of the different actors and see how can we make it the best way possible to manage the waste. So I feel like they have still a lot of accountability to do, and that's what I understood, that they try to say, okay, let's put, for example, the BUMDs and waste bank together, or I want to open, for example, the regional environmental agency, they wanted to open a waste bank in every villages, but there was no follow-up. So they said, yeah, okay, let's do that. Waste bank is good. Let's do one in each village. But then this actually never happened. And there's only a couple of waste bank for the coastal region over there. And then, so this is for the village government. They still need to work a lot. And then you mentioned it was about
about the young people in the village. Do they have any initiative about waste management in their village?
Maybe I'm not sure about North Minahasa because I didn't have direct contact. But for example, I know the famous story of Gili Trawangan, which I always take, and in also Bali, because those are much more famous island, I feel like. But it's almost I think the new generation, they are much more involved in sustainability and green and being really trying climate change, you know. So for example, in Bali, there was those 14-year-old girl who tried to ban plastic, single-use plastic, and they do actually, I feel like they do a lot more for sustainability than the older generation, which don't know about education and awareness about climate change. They might not believe in it. They just burn their trash and be like, okay, it's fine. But I think as the newer generation, and even a bit myself, I feel like this is much more anchored into our actions and our mind to be more sustainable and green for the future. So they are doing, I think, a lot of work, the young people, but I have not personally maybe meet them, but I know that young people are doing a lot of NGOs and a lot of green works and all of those.
Yeah, Pak Akbar, do you have any comments? So there haven't been any specific role for the village government in waste management, apparently.
Yeah, I think Celia already mentioned about that. I think in the future we really need to work with the village government because they are the interface, the direct interface with the problem. You know, I mean, so you indicate that it's really lacking. So it gives us, you know, much more a lead that probably one of the linkage between the problem and the solution is also working with the village government. So thank you for that, Celia.
Thank you for your question.
Yes, and then the young people in North Minahasa. So this is probably why you need to visit North Minahasa, so you can also talk to the young people if they have initiative for waste management. And I think some, not particular in North Minahasa, but the youngsters from Mudung families, so it is like a community of divers. They also have initiatives of cleaning the beach and oceans. So yeah, I think there are movements for young people in North Sulawesi especially, but I think we still need to support them more, and yeah, so that their activities can continue. And then third question from Pak Akbar is about the operational cost. So one of your results say that the limitation of waste management governance in North Minahasa is in the cost. So the question here is the operational cost for transporting the waste from Ganga Island. Is it an obstacle for waste management connectivity? For example, the profit cannot support the circular economy, so it cannot cover the cost of transporting waste from the island to the mainland. What do you think about that?
I think, yeah, that is actually really interesting. There will always be cost, but I think that at the end, a circular economy will be more profitable than just of course, throwing your trash, because at some point you won't have any more petrol or you won't have any more plastic and all of those. And for example, and what was also really interesting is that the private actors, which are like the resort, the clubs, and all of those different big companies, they actually don't have a waste issue because they know what they produce, right? So they know where their trash coming from, they know how much, because they have hotels, they know what they're doing, and they know how to recycle it. And then they usually transport it. And I know that they work, for example, with other maybe waste bank or something, and they try to transport it together to make it more sustainable. And also that the issue is more about the waste that is arriving to the beaches, because those are the waste. There's too many coming from the ocean, from mainland people who just throw away their trash, and that they cannot take care of it because it's too costly, it takes too much human resources. But the cost, I don't think that if you have really efficient way to recycle, to transport it, and to you know how to take care of your own trash, and if a small island actually does this, then it will be much more, it will be better than importing all of the trash. If they actually can do their own circular economy, at some point they won't be, of course, I don't think the cost will be bigger than actually what they will benefit.
Yeah.
Please, Pak Akbar.
Yeah,
You have any comments about that?
Yeah, I think the key factors here is trying to combine between the profit that you potentially gain with the public service that you need to give to the people for the sake of, you know, this waste management. So it should go both ways. So I think, yeah, I agree with you that the government, the society itself, they have to have the leadership to tackle the problem. Because if you really rely on the economic side of it, it doesn't make sense just to rely on the profit side of it. But if you combine both of it, you probably have like the reduction of the cost that you potentially gain from working with your waste, selling to the right price, selling to the right person or to the right company, whatever it is. And then you combine it with some level of subsidized mechanism from the government. So I think one of the problem, I agree with you that the waste management is not priority yet, but it doesn't really means that there is no funding there. But if we can somehow put everybody together in one table, talk about it, and share the burden together, it should be, you know, somehow we can work on it. So using several different funding pots and coordination between parties, then probably we'll end up with something really, really new, like the innovation of a waste management system that viable to be done in North Minahasa. So because I really interested in your remarks on Gili Trawangan, because Gili Trawangan problem is really huge. It was huge. It's so huge because it stick out to the global, you know, societies.
Yeah.
But then the village government working together with the private sectors, the tourism sectors, can actually do something. So I don't know, maybe there is something that we can work around on that point.
Yeah.
Terima kasih.
Just a small follow-up, I think that the Gili Trawangan was a really good example because, yeah, they had a big issue and they really had, for example, they had EcoGili, I think, which was a NGO, so based on the society, and then there was the FMTLP, I think, which was a bunch of entrepreneurs together, so more the private sector together, and then both of them, they try to include the government, the Gili Eco Trust, yeah, exactly. And so they put all of those three together, so they had the private the public sector and then the society, and that they have managed to make it work all together by just being committed and try to find new solution and innovation. And this also has to, I think that I still believe that the economic side still has a big importance, because if you, as you said, if they do just, if they know how to make the cost and the revenues and maybe make actually some profits, and then if they have those financial trainings, then it will be more just more welcoming to go into the waste management, because you can make money and you know how much you win and how much you will lose. And so those economic like trainings and incentives are still really important. But this is just a small comment. Follow-up.
Yes, thank you, Celia and Pak Akbar. And also, in this research in Gangga Island, there are private sectors, right? The Gangga Resort. During your research, do you obtain any information about what is the role of Gangga Resort in this case, maybe to educate the village, the villages in Gangga Island, because I think they have more knowledge about waste management. Do you obtain any information about that? Maybe the CSR activities from resort to the villages or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was also really interesting that I forgot to mention it. But as I've said, so they are kind of sustainable. So they know more about, they know what they produce and how to recycle more, because those are big companies from usually foreigners. And I know that, for example, the Gangga Island Resorts, they've tried to work with, there are 2 villages in Gangga, and they try to work with them, but also, I feel like the local communities over there are not always trusting, you know, big international corporation. Maybe they're like, what do they want? They might want to take something from us, you know. So they have tried, I think, to make some education, awareness, and maybe try to also transport the trash, for example, if they have recycled it, but it hasn't been yet successful. So here it goes back to the fact that there is maybe not enough trust, or prior collaboration has not worked, and see how can they maybe sit down to a table and talk about, okay, we want to help and see what we can do. Because the Gangga Island Resort is actually, they use panel resort, they try to recycle, they don't use single-use plastic. So they are really trying, but then if they really want to do something, I think they should also involve then the local communities and the villages. So they have tried some stuff, but I think that they should work more towards that, really a collaboration between them, because they are still on the same island. But I thought that was really interesting too.
Yes, that means that there are still possibilities for them to work together, maybe an organization, an NGO, or perhaps the local governments from the district or can perhaps facilitate between private sectors and also the community who lives in the island. Okay. Is there any more questions? Perhaps we still have 1 minute to go. If there are no questions anymore, maybe we can proceed to your second presentation, Celia, which is sharing your work experience, because as the situation of there are reputations be here in the field, you rely on online coordination, meetings, trainings, and all volunteers to help you to get the data you need. Okay, for the next presentation, Celia, please.
Yes, perfect. So actually, I'm just going to follow. You can still see the PowerPoint, right? Yes. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah. So we thought that would still be really interesting for maybe some of you if you want to work with YAPK. How was it? Maybe what was difficult, and maybe some tips also. So at least overall, I think my working experience with the with Indonesian people have been really positive, and also with YAPK. So as I've said, I'm here in Belgium, so in Europe, and so I didn't have the chance to go to Indonesia, which I was really sad about, because I know it's a really beautiful country and I really wanted to go there. But I still got the chance to learn a lot and meet also really nice people so far away. So that is still amazing. And so I think it's really important to say maybe a couple of words of what has happening. So as a first background, I was an intern at Maastricht School of Management in the Netherlands, and they have a collaboration with IPB, so the Agriculture University of Bogor. And then I've worked, and they have this CTSS, the Center of Transdisciplinary and Sustainable Sciences. And through Pak Akbar, thank you, I've also then had the chance to work with YAPK for the small island and for my thesis. And so this is what it came to be. And I've worked with YAPK for more than a month, I think, a month and a half, maybe something like that. And I think that it was really interesting. So overall in Indonesia, I think that I have found a lot of opportunities doing this still online, because otherwise, if it wasn't online, I would have not had the chance to do this. And so it was still, I think, a new culture. Indonesian, I think they're still very, I think that everyone has been really welcoming. Every Indonesian I have talked about try to either speak English or always be nice and really be involved in it, and having these challenging conditions. So you have to be flexible, you have to have a good time management, for example, because here we have 5 hours delay, so that was also really difficult. But you have to have good skills, time management, and trying to just self-control. And it was also a really good mix between practical and theoretical. So for example, there's still a lot of reading, you still have to do research and readings, but I really like the fact that I had the practical side. For example, I was still trying to have interviews with some people or talk with the local people to know what was happening. And so it's really a mix about what is really happening on the field and what do we see on papers. So that was really still stimulating for me, even though you have to do it from here, which is less fun. But yeah, I think YAPK is really easy to work with. So we've done a couple of meetings. Everyone is easygoing, and then also the volunteers that were there, we did a day of training. So that was also really, I think, really good for me, and also just meeting up with other young people and just talking about maybe the waste and everything. And I think that everyone is rather committed, so they are involved, engaged, and if you have an issue, you can just talk to anyone. So it has been really, I think, a learning curve. But of course, there are some disadvantages to be online. So one of the things is the new culture. I think that I adapt myself really easily, because also I might maybe the Asian background, but maybe just the language. I know that most of you are Indonesian, so that won't be an issue. But if you want to work with local communities and in small villages, you have to speak Indonesian, which wasn't always my case. But luckily, most of the people can also speak English. There are also a lot of different culture, different ethnics, different religion that you have to take into account, because all of those local knowledges are still practiced, especially if you work with YAPK in small community, in community empowerment and nature conservation. Then you need to know what are their relationship with nature, how do they view maybe with their gods, and all of those different things that you need to take into account, which might not be always easy for everyone. But once again, if you're Indonesian, I think you are more already accustomed to this. And I think that also one thing that was really challenging was the whole administrative side. So there are so many different government agencies, so many different levels, and so many different provinces, and so many different it's, I think, a lot. And as a foreigners, you should at least try to get more into it. And being offline was harder to grasp that. So, for example, also having a remote location that you cannot always reach, or maybe there's no connection, that was you need to take into account if you do that online, and try to find other solutions, or maybe prepare documents for maybe the local people for them to go. So you need to prepare everything in advance. I think that communication with the YAPECA team was, I think, always good, but it's still, for example, it's sometimes you can lose quickly touch and not being as effective in communicating and expressing what you feel like, because then sometimes it's through messages or whatever. So this is also a bit hard. From me, which is in another country, I did also get the chance to experience the working ethic. So maybe I think it's really different. For example, some country you have to be late, or some country you have to be early, and all of those different. So I think that for me, it was quite okay being online, but also this is something to take into account if you go on the field. And of course, COVID-19, of course, wasn't good for anyone. So this has been really also a big challenge, is not being able to just go on the field and see the trash and see the people and talk to them. So those were the most challenging part, but I think it wasn't even that bad. Still had a really great experience. And maybe some tips, at least for me, that I had is that maybe effective communication. So it's really important to try to stay connected and having updates with the team that you're working with. So maybe set bi or weekly meetings to stay up to date and share, to have this informal share of knowledge, and maybe see, oh, this is good, this is not good. And also check, how do people stay connected? Do they use WhatsApp? Do they use Facebook? How do they talk? Do they prefer video calling, phone calls? All of those. So it's really important. Mutual understanding. So I think that was also a big struggle that I had, because I didn't really understand maybe sometimes where we were going, what we were doing. So it's really important to define the roles, expectation, outputs, goals, needs. And so really just be transparent. If you don't understand something, just say it. And have a person to go to. I think that if I had an issue, I could always send someone a message. It was fine, and just ask, can you help me with this? Or just ask for support and assistance. Don't be shy. And as I've said, but if you are Indonesian, it shouldn't be an issue. Learn the customs. So in an international setting, it's either Indonesia or somewhere else. I think it's always important to adapt yourself, to learn the country customs, tradition, how do they work, and everything. So this is what I've tried to do, but online is much, much harder. But those are small tips that at least I try to implement. And another small code, I think that is collaboration allows us to know more than we are capable of knowing ourselves, because if we share our knowledge, I think that it's always better, and we have better ideas and more innovative ideas too. So I just wanted to end on that. And thank you for your attention. If you have still any questions or feedback, and I think that maybe the YAPECA team can share the slides, and I will also follow with the policy brief that I have already started, but I just wanted to see if there were anything else coming up.
Yeah, thank you, Celia, for sharing your work experience during your internship with us. For me, it's been an experience as well. My first experience in supervising intern in long distance internship. So it has been also a learning experience for myself as well. I'm happy. We are happy to be of help for you. And after hearing what Celia experienced in her internship with YAPECA, is there any comments or question from anyone? Pak Akbar, please, you raised your hand.
Yes. So thank you, Celia, for being with us. And it's a really different experience for me even. working long distance and trying to overcome many problems, communications, time differences, whatever. There is so many things, but by the end of the day, we are here and you finish your job. So that's a really good thing. Congratulations. And more importantly, you also, interact with us and you give, I think, a lot of thoughts for the volunteers here also. So my question is, what is your biggest takeaway from this experience? What is the most important takeaway?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I think that my best takeaway is that it's always better to work together. It's just, I think, I know that I'm biased kind of because I'm talking about collaboration, but I think that working together is much, much better. And for example, the waste management, this is the topic, but I wouldn't have done anything differently. And for me, it was my first working experience. So, and it was offline, so that was both together. But I also take out that Indonesian are really nice and welcoming. I really like that. And yeah, that's mostly it, I think. And trying communication and trying to stay focused.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
And thank you so much for having me and the whole YAPECA. I think you've been really of a great help and you've done a lot for me. So thank you so much. And it has been a really great pleasure to work with you.
You're welcome, Celia. It is also a pleasure to work with you as well. Okay. We have a couple of minutes left before we end this presentation session. So for the last agenda is closing remarks from Pak Akbar. Pak Akbar, if you please.
Yes. Thank you, Celia, for setting up your time, your efforts being with us today. And I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to receive your policy brief. And of course, it might be the end for the whole research and internship work, but I do hope that in the future we can still collaborate together. I don't know in what kind of relation, in what kind of format, but I do agree with you that it is very important to collaborate. So thank you so much for that. And I will switch to bahasa Indonesia. Teman-teman semuanya, terima kasih sudah berada di sini bersama kita, bersama Celia. Mudah-mudahan perbedaan bahasa ini tidak menimbulkan persoalan dalam menyerap pembelajaran-pembelajaran. Saya kira nanti kita juga bisa minta Celia presentasinya dan kita bisa diskusi lebih lanjut. Tapi yang paling penting adalah bagaimana kita bisa melihat semangat seorang Celia Wang yang bekerja dari jarak jauh tanpa merasa itu sebuah tantangan yang terlalu berat untuk bisa dilalui bersama. Jadi saya kira itu poin dari diskusi kita hari ini. Kita bisa berkolaborasi. Kalau kita bisa kolaborasi, maka mudah-mudahan kita bisa mengatasi persoalan-persoalan yang ada, khususnya di persoalan pengelolaan sampah dalam hal ini di pesisir dan pulau-pulau kecil. Terima kasih, Ami.
Terima kasih, Pak Akbar. Thank you also, Celia, and thank you everyone who have participated in the discussion today. Mungkin kita masih banyak kekurangan ya dalam pengelolaan sampah di Indonesia ini, khususnya di Minahasa Utara, apalagi di pulau-pulau kecil, dan ini menjadi PR bagi kita semua, bagaimana kita bisa berkolaborasi untuk menanggulangi masalah sampah ini. Thank you again, Celia. I wish you good luck over there.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone for participating and coming. I hope you enjoyed it and you will at least know it for yourself about the waste management.
Yeah, thank you again everyone. And then kita sudah sampai di penghujung acara. Terima kasih rekan-rekan semuanya, bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu, rekan-rekan yang sudah hadir dan sudah berpartisipasi. Kita akan ketemu lagi di sesi mendatang kalau ada. Terima kasih semuanya. Selamat sore, selamat siang. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sampai jumpa. Salam
Sampai
sehat
jumpa.
semuanya.
Selamat pagi, selamat sore, selamat malam. Bye-bye all.
Terima kasih.